All right, Mike Hamilton, CEO of Ziften. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the download. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
No, an absolute pleasure. So, which part of the world do we find you in today? Looks like you might be at home.
So I'm at home here in Austin, Texas.
Fantastic. And Austin, Texas has been home for a while for you, yeah?
Yeah, so I've been here about 18 years, since 2000.
Fantastic. And tell me, Mike, tell me a little bit about, tell me about you. What do you do? What's your role? Like, what do you do as the CEO of Ziften? Because you used to be the Chief Technology Officer, if I'm not mistaken.
Chief Product Officer. Yeah, so I came in to Ziften about 3.5 years ago, took over product management, sort of put together, a big re-architecture to support really sort of the next generation of endpoint threats. Our CEO stepped down a few months back, and I was asked to step in and take over, which I happily obliged. It was an awesome opportunity, and so yeah, really, I'm sort of focused on setting the vision for Ziften, how we fit in the security space out there. Product is obviously a big piece of that, as well as our sales partners, technology partners, and really just sort of the whole top down look at Ziften.
Fantastic. And tell me, a lot of our audience like to understand, how did somebody get to become CEO of a company, of a software company? Or what's your career progression that you've had? What did you study? What did you do?
Yeah, so I had sort of a little interesting path. So I studied electrical engineering in undergrad, and I actually wanted to be a chip designer for video cards, of all things. I used to be a big gamer. Yeah,
Favorite game?
I'm sorry.
Favorite game?
I haven't played games in a long time, but Unreal Tournament had quite a few LAN parties in high school and into college, playing some Unreal Tournament too.
Fantastic. So,
Back when a 600 megahertz processor, and 32 megs of RAM was enough to actually play real games.
yeah, not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So ended up being a chip designer when I finished school. Ended up actually working more. Ended up going to work for a company. We made network processors. Knew nothing about networks, anything like that, but sort of fell into that. Did that for quite a while. While I loved being a chip designer, if you know anything about silicon design, you essentially sit in a cube, hack away for 60 hours a week for like 5 months, and then you sit around for 18 months waiting for all of it to come back. So there's a lot of downtime, and I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. If it had been that all the time, I probably would have continued doing that forever because I really loved that. So didn't know what I wanted to do. So ended up going back to business school. And then when I was finishing business school, ended up going to work for a company and on the product management side at a company that had used some of the chips that I had been on the design teams for. And that's sort of how I sort of got out of the cube and into the customer. So did that for a while. We did network and security tests. That's sort of how I bridged over into the security domain. Ended up going to work after we sold that company. Ended up going to work for a small startup doing security analytics, and then actually met the Ziften folks at RSA about 4 or 5 years ago, and had a nice connection. Did an integration with them at the previous company, and then when it was time for the next thing, Ziften happened to be looking for someone to come take over product, and it was sort of just a natural fit. And then did the product thing here at Ziften, a little bit of sales, a little bit of product, a little bit of everything, and then once our CEO decided it was time for him to take his next steps, here we go.
That's fantastic. So what I'm hearing is we've got a, deep down chipset techie guy who then became a security guy who learned about business and built and took products to market and now is taking an entire company's worth of products to market. What a great journey.
Yeah, that's the way more succinct and articulate way.
It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear the color around. It's easy for me to summarize that sort of stuff. So why Ziften? Why did you choose Ziften? What was it that you saw in Ziften 3 years ago when it was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, 3.5, it'll be 4 years in March.
What did you
So
think
honestly,
there?
yeah, so honestly, Like I said, the last company we were doing security analytics. We would take flow, we'd take logs, sort of almost like an early version of a sort of the next gen SIM in user behavior analysis. And ultimately, we could take all this great log data, and we had some unbelievable analytics. And ultimately, you could get down to patterns and see bad behavior down to an IP address. And it's like, okay, great, you've got an IP. Well, in the world of DHCP and Wi-Fi, what is that IP? Who was it at that time? And there was just that black box endpoint. And so RSA must have been about, let's see, 2014 or so. And started going through RSA, looking to find some endpoint partners that we could get some endpoint data, get that extra, call it last mile visibility, what binaries, what users, what processes, what command lines were making these, it was sort of that last mile attribution. And honestly, none of the big guys would talk to me. We were a small startup, 50, 60 people. No one was looking for new endpoint vendors and or new partners in other spaces. And at the time, Ziften was looking, and it was just sort of a perfect match. And like I said earlier, we did an integration pretty quickly, and it sort of proved our theory that that extra endpoint visibility and not even to mention the detections and other capabilities that came along with it, but even just having the data was a huge sort of a huge eye-opening, opening our eyes into what really you could do with analytics once you could actually see into the endpoint.
Right, and so that's where the connection became. And now, like we look at what Ziften's been doing since, and Ziften's clearly established a phenomenal relationship with Microsoft. Talk to me about, the gaps that you've plugged for Microsoft and that relationship that you have with Microsoft.
Yeah, great question. It's been an interesting relationship because on one hand, the Microsoft product, Windows Defender ATP, which by the way is a fantastic product, we sort of compete against them, right? Because we have our own platform, they have their platform. But in the case of the Defender ATP, they primarily had support for Windows devices, Windows 10. Then this was, when we first sort of joined into this partnership and this relationship started. In fact, at Black Hat, almost nearly, exactly a year ago, this week, in fact. And they had Windows 10 support. They still hadn't yet released their Windows Server support, but there's not many environments that are completely homogeneous, Windows. There's certainly, Mac is obviously, Apple devices are getting a larger and larger footprint. And then of course you start talking about data center, cloud infrastructure, and you have a huge Linux footprint, Unix, Solaris, Linux, et cetera. And so that's where Microsoft went the partner route to go be able to sort of cover the entire enterprise, which integrates directly into Windows Defender ATP. Really the best integration I've ever seen. And I've seen lots of integrations coming from the network side, but this is it's seamless, it's easy, and it just works.
Oh, fantastic. So, there was a time where people used to say, oh, Macs and Linux, by extension now, since the OS has been based on that, you never really needed to protect them. There was never a threat that was going to impact that device. What changed?
I think some of it is, on the Mac side, certainly they've made, Apple's made a huge, huge inroads into the enterprise the last few years. Their, better ability to do mobile device management on the Apple side, as well as, Active Directory integration, things like that, has made Apple and Macs a little bit more enterprise friendly than maybe they used to be, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I think that, and that attack surface becoming, more prevalent. Two, I think what you see a lot of the times is a lot of executive team members, executive staff, CSAF, often are using Mac devices. They tend to be a little easier. There's some, now obviously, Microsoft and some of the Windows device manufacturers have come a long way in their own hardware. That's sort of the sleekness and the travelability. But I think there's a lot of important people and a lot of enterprises that are using Mac devices, and so the financial impact or the financial Apple, if you will, for the attackers is now there to start developing exploits, attacks, malware against certainly Mac devices. And then of course on the Linux side, just so much infrastructure out there running Linux, whether or not that's serving up banking sites or insurance sites, things that have potentially high impact. There's now a financial interest to do that. And then of course, sort of state-sponsored attacks where with infinite resources, a nation state trying to get access to intellectual property or trying to get access to state secrets, maybe it's not even a financial goal or a financial driver in some of these cases. So there's now just more reasons to go after alternative platforms than just Windows.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And there's so many security vendors in the market, right? We work with a number of security vendors. I just did a recent download with another security vendor we work with, Skybox, and I asked the same question of their CEO. There are thousands of security vendors. There are new security vendors popping up left, right, and center. What differentiates Ziften? Why is it that, where does Ziften sit within that? What problems do you solve differently or better?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, or maybe not so obviously, here at Ziften, we are focused on the endpoint. And when I say endpoint, that has lots of connotations, mobile, et cetera. But when we're talking about endpoints, we're talking about laptop, desktop, as well as servers, data center, cloud, and that's really what we're focused on. So that's providing sort of an entire endpoint protection platform across those devices. And really trying to simplify the entire endpoint. So I think one of the biggest things out there in the security market today is, you go to RSA or you go to Black Hat, really any of these shows, you just see thousands and thousands of security vendors. And if you look at the endpoint space, that's a huge percentage of even that number is focused on the endpoint. There's lots of statistics and articles about there about 10 agents, 20 agents, how many different endpoints any individual organization might have. And I think one of the things that we're really focused on is being able to bring a fantastic solution in as many different categories of endpoint and to sort of simplify. We're all about simplification. You start to get too complex and you get 5 different endpoint vendors and you have 3 different network vendors and you've got Active Directory and you've got all sorts of these solutions, deception technologies. It just gets so complicated and it's so easy for things to sort of come unglued. And for people to sneak in and sort of hide between the cracks. So it's really about providing endpoint protection in the simplest and easiest way possible.
Okay, and you have multiple solution sets, right? So you have your endpoint, threat protection. Talk to me about your other solution sets that you have.
So we actually have a product that we call ZFlow. There's lots of people out there that are using flow analysis, NetFlow, IPFix. For looking for threats, looking for network performance issues. And what we've done with ZFlow is take our expertise at being extremely lightweight on the endpoint, again, laptop, desktop, server, cloud infrastructure, and be able to actually create flow, that flow visibility where you might not typically have it. So you start moving data center infrastructure out to public cloud, Azure, AWS, Google Compute. And you start losing access to edge routers, edge gateways where you might have previously collected flow from. You sort of lose that visibility. And then 2, we bring endpoint attribution embedded in the flow record so that not only do you get that visibility from a flow perspective that you didn't used to have, now you also know, again, back to my original point on how I came to Ziften, knowing what user, process, binary, command line was actually responsible for the network connection brings immense value from the security perspective and makes flow even more useful than just sort of standard volume metrics.
Yeah, so in the cloud, something like Flow, so ZFlow makes, or ZFlow because you're American, something like ZFlow makes a really big difference in terms of how you can, once you identified a threat as well, where did the threat come from, how did it penetrate, et cetera.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. And you've got some exciting products on the horizon that I know a little bit about. Are they things that you're prepared to share at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. We're out to announce this tomorrow. In fact, all of our website our updated website with the new product information will go live. But we are actually, as of tomorrow, announcing the early access of our. I'm air quoting here, but now we're on video, so you can actually see my air quote. Next Gen AV. I always hate the coming out of the network space. The next gen firewall. It was always lazy marketing. So we're not calling it next gen AV, but sort of the advanced AV powered by machine learning and AI models. So we'll actually be announcing the full protection. Previously, we were a little bit more focused on the visibility, the detection and response sort of post breach. Now we're bringing sort of the extra component of full AV. Again, machine powered, machine model and AI into the equation. And I think as our customers, our existing customers, sort of fire up on it, and as new customers start taking a look, I think they'll see that it's a really light years ahead of just about every other AV solution out there. The performance, the efficacy, the accuracy is really unbelievable. The team has done an unbelievable job.
That's fantastic. So that sort of puts you into a different area of the market as well, right? That's the area that traditionally you've got the CrowdStrikes and those kinds of players that are in that space.
Yeah, so we've always had the EDR, the continuous visibility monitoring perspective. We also have really a strong differentiator for us is, in fact, what you'll see on the site as that goes live is this concept of plus. It's not just protection, detection. It's also the hardening of the endpoints, visibility into sort of the vulnerability management, rogue assets that might be on your network. There's all of these other values that we've always had, and we've always had the EDR component, and now sort of this AV and advanced protection comes in, and really again, back to my point a second ago, it's really all about simplifying endpoint protection. And it's not just AV, it's not just post-breach and forensics, it's now also inclusive of the hardening and the sort of like CIS compliance benchmarks, things of that nature, to really sort of minimize the attack funnel and the attack surface when you get to the end of the day.
Excellent. So moving a little bit away from the product side of Ziften, I mean, we were introduced to you by Microsoft. And we've been enjoying a wonderful relationship with you. It's early days, but so far so great. And I'm keen, to understand from your perspective. Again, you're relatively new into the CEO seat, but as a product, in the product management role, you certainly would have had exposure to the channel. What do you think? And now that you're in a CEO capacity, what do you think a perfect partner relationship looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a partner perspective, it's really about working as a team. Ultimately, we're in sales, and the idea is to work as a team to make as much money as we possibly can while solving major customer issues. So in terms of the perfect partner, it's really about the partner educates us and brings the feedback back from customers on what things are working. We can talk to as many customers as we want, but at the end of the day, the folks, the partners like yourselves that are day-to-day working with these with the end users and the customers and have long-standing relationships and can have those conversations that sort of cut through the friendlies, and it gets down to the nuts and bolts, and sort of we get to take advantage of that, and then we get to then take that feedback and deliver it back to you guys with a better product, and really work together to solve those problems that your customers are seeing maybe in your geographic region, in A and Z region, that might be different from what people see in other areas, and really being able to work together to solve those problems.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, right? Because with our sort of global presence in US and UK, the regional issues in security, that there's no real region, is what we find. I don't know if you're seeing it the same from your end, but we find a security problem is a security problem. It exists everywhere. The technology is pretty prolific. It's all pretty much the same. And the issues and the threats that come out, nobody is safe, is the reality.
Yep.
Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, really, those threats are sort of right. There is sort of no region, and they are very widespread attacks. A lot of the same techniques, and that is always true in the general case until it's not. Until there's a targeted attack for one of your customers in Australia that has a particular domain name that's very easily. They can change the zeros or the O's in the domain name to zeros, and it makes it so much easier to do a spear phishing attack, and it looks like they're hitting the bank side and not. And so it's really sort of interesting that while all the attack scenarios and attackers are really after the same things, but there's so many different ways to exploit them and take advantage of them, and some of them are sort of regional based on especially in the APAC region when you have special characters, and you have Unicode, and you have UTF characters. It gets really fascinating and is a difficult problem, but fun problem to solve.
It is. It's like staying ahead of the bad guys, right?
Yeah, it's the I don't know if you guys have the old like the arcade game, the whack-a-mole. You have the little mallet, and you're trying to whack the moles back down.
Absolutely. You got to stay. It used to be that you were chasing them. Now it's about staying ahead of them and having them chase you, and sort of work out how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I say, we've enjoyed a really fantastic relationship. We're really excited about your new technology that you're just bringing out too. I think that is going to be, it is going to shake the market up a little bit for your existing customers and your future customers. And you mentioned earlier on that, you did an MBA. People who do MBAs and those sorts of things tend to want to keep reading and keep learning. And, it's a sign of somebody that's looking for growth. Talk to me about the three best books that you would recommend to our audience. And they don't have to necessarily be business related books. They could be just a fictional book that, everybody needs their downtime and off time. So, what are sort of three books that come straight to mind that you'd recommend people read?
Yeah, a couple of books. One, this one actually I read actually pretty recently. It's called Leaders Eat Last.
Mm-hmm. Simon
And
Sinek.
I'm sorry.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Actually, all of his books are very good. There's another one which I read recently, of course, and sort of taking over the sort of the reins of CEO, and it's called Switch. I don't remember exactly what the subtitle is, but it's really about how to change things when change is difficult, and frankly, change is always hard. But that was a pretty interesting read. See, I've got one more businessy one, but I'm trying to think if I could think of a good technical book. Um, I don't know. My favorite technical book is the Brian Kernighan. It's a C book. It was probably it's the book that kept me. I actually failed my first programming class in college, and then I read this book, and then I got an A plus the second time through the class when I actually sat down and read the book, and just the way it sort of explained not just the language and how it evolved, but also as it sort of bridged into the computer architecture, which is certainly shaped my career.
Fantastic. And speaking of your career, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career so far?
Biggest lesson, I would say it actually sort of comes out of some of the partnerships that we've done, OEM partners that we've OEM to, or channel partners, is really if you can be open and honest and transparent with your partners, and everyone can just be on the same page in what drives everyone. And of course, this is predicated on your relationships being people working with people that you trust and are trustworthy people, that you can actually have open conversations and really align business goals and financial goals and product goals, and actually make everything better for everyone. And it doesn't always have to be, let's see if we can take the screws to you. Let's see how hard we can negotiate. Let's get the best price. That if you can just work together and be open and honest, that things typically work out way better than when you sort of go with the hard charging negotiation style.
And and that for me is really heartening to hear, and that's one of the reasons why we selected Ziften as well. It's not just about the technology; it's also about what you do with the technology and the company that you work with. Three of our fundamental core values are honesty, integrity, and trust. And there's a couple of things that you've said that have really resonated with me. One of them was your absolute forthrightness about we're all in this to make money. And I think a lot of people are sort of shy about making that statement. It's the reality, right? We're all in sales. We're all about making money. That doesn't mean we're all about fleecing people and doing the wrong thing by end users. And if you couple we're all about money, but we want to do it with honesty, with integrity, we want to partner with people who make that a reality, then that's always where the best partnerships are found. And I fundamentally agree with what it is you're saying there.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole zero sum game concept, and not being able to work together. We are here to make money, and everybody that we're selling to and delivering product to, they're in the same business. If their company's not making money, they can't afford to buy the product. They need to protect themselves. So, if you just cut through all the fluff and get to the point, and it saves everybody time. My wife. My wife said something to me not too long ago that was talking about income producing activities. If it's not something that produces income, which is either making it easier to sell a product or less expensive to sell a product, or it's not actually doing something to make it better, then you're essentially wasting time. And cutting through the fluff is the easiest way to keep focused on the right things, and making sure everybody's better off.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit, just as a last question for you to end on an interesting note. Tell me about one of the craziest experiences you've had. That can be work related, it could be a crazy customer experience, a crazy customer story, it could be personal related, you could have jumped off a building and base jumped, whatever it might be. Tell me about the craziest experience you've
Well, the ones that would be appropriate, just
had.
kidding. Actually, it was Black Hat. I guess that was I guess 2 years ago now at Black Hat. HP was actually running a promotion that was like it was in Vegas. It was like an upgrade your stay promotion, and you just had to send them tweets with like your wish, almost like your wish list, and they were granting these wishes. People were doing like helicopter rides down the strip, or go to the go get a ride in a or drive a Ferrari around the racetrack. And there's one of my favorite restaurants is in Vegas, and I asked for two tables or two seats at this super exclusive restaurant, and they replied back and said, "Well, we're not genies, but how about this chef's other restaurant?" So they picked us up in a limo, drove us down the strip to his other restaurant, took care of the whole tab, gave us a big old tab, and when the waiter came up at the very beginning, he was like, "I don't know who you are, but whatever you do, I want in because it was like a $500 tab, all in. They took care of everything. That was
Wow.
one of the coolest things that's happened. So shout out to HP. That was a cool promotion.
And who did they do that for? Was that for anybody who put in a wish? Did they grant like everybody's wish?
So I don't know exactly what the sort of the limitations were. A guy I used to work with, he's a big golfer. He asked for some, brand new golf club, and I saw him walking around the show floor, and he went and picked it up. They got him his golf club. There was a couple people that, like I said, did like the helicopter rides or the Dune Buggies in the desert. I don't know how much they spent, but it was a super cool promotion. And 2 years later, I'm still talking about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, I just did the Dune buggies in the desert when I was in Vegas for Microsoft Inspire. I think I ate my weight in dust. It
Oh,
was,
I believe it. When two companies back, when we sold, right after we sold the company, the acquiring company took a lot of the team out after the sales kickoff, and we did dune buggies in the desert. It was fun when you're going over those hills and you can't see you have no idea what's on the other side of that hill. It's pretty scary.
yeah, it's great fun. Now tell me, what was the name of this restaurant that you wanted to go to, and what's the restaurant that you ended up at?
So the restaurant I wanted to go to was E by Jose Andres.
Mhm.
It's in either the Cosmopolitan or Aria, one of those right there. It's actually inside of one of his other restaurants. It's only 9 seats. And it's like 15 course, at this super private, super cool. What we ended up going to Bizarre Meat down in the Stratosphere, and the meat was unbelievable. The experience there, it was almost as good, just a little less exclusive, but it was unbelievable dinner.
Fantastic. So not only did we get a crazy experience, well done HPE, but we've also got 2 restaurant recommendations in addition to our 3 book recommendations. Well done.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike Hamilton, it's been an absolute pleasure to have a conversation with you. Thank you very much for joining myself and our audience on the download. On behalf of Incentra, congratulations on your promotion into the CEO role, and I look forward to personally working with you and for our organizations to grow and prosper with one another and to make some money.
Absolutely. Same thing. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to working more with you guys.